welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside my good friend and co-host Tony Cepeda. And today we're doing our first evaluation of the offensive lineman group for the Chicago Bears. This is probably going to change a couple more times, even though free agency does start in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. The Bears have roughly $42 million in cap as of right now. And we're going to have another video coming up on how the Bears can create even more space. Cough, cough, Nick Foles. There's a lot of potential this offseason, and $42 million is quite a chunk of change. So before we get into our offensive lineman predictions or suggestions to Ryan Poles, because we all know he listens to us, on who he should sign, Tony, spring is upon us, getting in the spirit. Big hailstorm this morning in Chicago. Very strange, but that means that spring is upon us, which means that outside beers will be back. Where is the best place in Chicago? And we want you guys to answer below where your favorite place to get a beer during the summer is in Chicago. But where is the best place in Chicago to get a cold one afterward? You can do the Burbs or the City, but I know that you're probably going to go with the City on this one.
So there's plenty of bars. Everyone has their favorite bar, so I didn't want to be like, oh, my favorite bar is this. Any rooftop. That is my official stance. Anywhere you can get to, like whether it's at a bar, whether it's your apartment building that you share with 20 neighbors, and you're just squeezing into a seat on this packed rooftop, whatever it is, get to an elevated surface, get closer to the sun, which totally makes a difference. I know, as a scientist, I know that. Catch a nice breeze, catch a jet stream. It's summertime in Chicago. Start slugging green lines. It's my personal favorite beer. Goose Island action. How about you?
I have personally seen Tony chug 2 green lines at Murphy's after a Cubs game, and he doesn't remember it, but I sure do. So, and his brother, that's the thing though, is that like, I'm going to say Murphy's. I love Murphy's. Murphy's or Rizzo's after a Cubs game, or even before a Cubs game. Even when it's cold out, it's just like you're in Wrigley. Like, I love Murphy's though. Shout out Nick Pope, my good friend of mine, bartender there. Always go there, look for Nick. You can't miss him. He's like 6'4", 300 pounds of muscle with a beard that goes down to his chest. So Tony remembers or doesn't remember the Long Islands he made, but they're pretty darn good. Also like Rizzo's if we're going from the west side of the stadium. But anyway, before you know it, Bears training camp, along with warm weather, which Bears training camp obviously is always in the middle of summer. This is where Ryan Poles will need to bring his expertise and now in getting offensive line to guard Justin Fields this upcoming this summer training camp, and also moving on through the season. There's a strong market for offensive linemen. So Tony, let's get into our list. Let's kick things off.
Yeah. So my first one, and we're not going to sign all of these guys. We're not saying this is our, starting 5 offensive linemen. These are guys personally for me that I would be thanking my lucky stars if we can get one of these guys. So my first guy is
full disclaimer, and some of them do involve not Teven, Jenkins, or Larry Borom not starting. Full disclaimer, and just putting that out there so no one get too upset. But this is who could bring an improved edge for now to Justin Fields. So Tony, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so my first one is Andrew Norwell, guard from the Jaguars. He's 30 years old, so he's a little older, and I'll kind of get into a reasoning on why I actually don't really care about the age. So he's 6'6", 340, just a big boy in the middle, or in the interior at least. He went to Ohio State years ago, so it could be a nice little Justin Fields connection there. Probably not. That's not my biggest reason for bringing him in, but I thought that was a nice little thing to throw in. He allowed 3 total sacks last year, which is honestly, the fact that they should just put him into the Hall of Fame right now, about how bad that Jags offense was. And I'm not even talking about Trevor Lawrence. I just mean, we saw it with Nagy. We thought that was bad, like the play design and any
go
sort of
watch
schemes.
the Jags.
The Jags were bad. So he is going to be expensive. Absolutely will be. The Jags are probably going to try to re-sign him. I admit any team should. But the Jags are a mess. I would not be surprised if he's like, I'm all set. I'm done with the Jags, removes himself from that situation. So the reason I want him, the biggest reason is he's reliable. He's just as reliable as it gets. He starts every game that he can, which is most of them. He's typically not hurt. He's been in the league for a while. He would be the perfect guy to anchor a potentially young offensive line, especially if we build through the draft and re-sign like James Daniels, or, if we go with Teven Jenkins and Larry Borom on, as tackles. We got a young offensive lineman. We need a guy that has that experience, that's just sturdy. He will do his job. and then you can kind of figure it out from there. The guy you don't have to worry about, basically.
He's a giant guard. Like 6'6", 340 is big for anybody, but for a guard, that is enormous. So especially on the interior end, that helps with, Aaron Donald or big guys like that, or Akeem Hicks if he ends up leaving the Bears. Like, he's able to maintain that kind of talent. So I'm staying on the interior for my first guy as well. I've kind of talked about him before on our Instagram. Is center Brian Allen from the Rams, obviously just coming off a Super Bowl. One of the best offensive lines in football, arguably, in the LA Rams. Matthew Stafford was like living on vacation compared to what he's had in Detroit before he went to LA. But he's an established center, and that's something the Chicago Bears are missing. He's a former 4th-round pick out of Michigan State, so he kind of has that chip on his shoulder. Like, I was drafted later. Everyone had 3 chances at me at least, and he's going to look for a big payday because he's 26 years old. He's played in 2 Super Bowls now, and he's in the prime of his career. And he's not a big guy. Like, there's no doubt about that. He's 6'2", 298. I'm not saying like he's a small guy, but for a lineman, he is short. But in the interior, that's okay. And he's just a big, strong dude. And, last year with Sam Mustipher, Sam Mustipher in 2020 was great. Sam Mustipher in 2021, not so great. And this is an establishment. It's a young guy that could come in and be an instant improvement to Justin Fields. And he's been part of a Super Bowl team, which is obviously a huge plus in knowing how to have that winning culture. And I kind of want to stay on the interior, even though that doesn't seem to be a problem for the Bears because you have James Daniels and Cody Whitehair this past year, who, besides 40-year-old Jason Peters, were arguably our best linemen on the offensive line, is that here's another guy that you could bring in that is a hybrid. He could be a guard or a center, and that's Austin Corbett. He's an offensive guard for the Rams, and bring this guy in if you don't end up signing, Brian Allen to a deal. He's also a part of the Rams, but he's a monster of a guard. He's 6'4", 308. So only 10 pounds more than Allen, but he's, 2 inches taller. And like we said, anyone above 6'3" on the interior is just a big dude. Justin Fields is going to have trouble seeing over some of his guys to a degree, but he's 26, just won a Super Bowl. Strong lineman, and he's coming off a 4-year contract only worth $8 million. So his rookie contract, he's going to be looking for a big payday, unfortunately, from a salary cap standpoint, but well-deserved. Strong interior blocker, helps with a lot of draw plays. Would have been great Matt Nagy's offense, but guess what? That bum's out of here. Just want to put that out there. Creates room up the middle for Monty. And if Monty was able to bulldoze over defensive linemen like he did this past year, imagine what he's going to do when he has the opening to run over linebackers and safeties. He's just going to be an absolute beast. So young offensive lineman. Tony said he doesn't care about age. I kind of care about age in this regard. But Tony, I really like your next pick as well, especially from a center's perspective.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny. My next pick kind of goes along the same reasoning you have, at least in my mind, with these Rams offensive linemen. Is Rams are going to have to do something. They're going to have to blow it up. They're going to have to not re-sign guys. They are in cap hell. So there's definitely they will not be re-signing at least both of those guys. They might be able to spring for one, but that's actually kind of how I feel about this next guy, Ryan Jensen from the Bucks. Not that they necessarily can't afford it, I don't think, but it's just Tom Brady's retired. They're kind of they got to rechurn a bunch of, or churn up, kind of their entire offense, their entire team, probably just kind of figure out what they're doing going forward. So Ryan Jensen, he's obviously from the Bucks, like I said. So he's 31 years old, 6'4", 319, another big boy. He allowed 2 sacks all year. Nick and I were actually talking on this pre-show. He allowed 2 sacks all year, 5 total penalties. PFF graded him like a 66. Doesn't make any sense. But either way, that's a guy. Again, like I said, he played with Brady the last couple of years, played in Baltimore before that. Those are just winning football clubs, and not even in the sense of the Chiefs have been shaky on their offensive line the past couple of years, but
they've been better the last 3 for sure.
Yeah, they have been better the last 3, but guy like Baltimore, I've never been like, wow, Baltimore, that terrible offensive line. That's always a strength of theirs, especially when they had Joe Flacco back there, or just that's why their running game is so strong.
Is Joe Flacco elite, Tony?
He is elite. He won a Super Bowl. Automatically. That's how it works. Yeah. So we could have that discussion maybe one day. So either way, I think it'll be he's as steady as they come. So he will be expensive, probably just because he will be in demand. Again, he's a little older, so he's not going to get like a max deal, I don't think, like your guy before here, was Brian Allen, you said, right? Or no, Austin Corbett.
Austin
right?
Corbett.
Yeah. So he will be in demand, probably a little bit, but That's a guy that can bring that veteran presence, kind of like Norwell. He can lead by example for a probably, again, young offense. And he gives Fields that stability he needs under center from a guy that, just plain and simple, we know will do the job. And that's we've needed that for a while. So that brings me to my third guy. I don't know what we're all thinking here. This might be a little controversial. Bring Jason Peters back for 5 years. No,
James Daniels.
No. That was
you were messing around.
That's
oh my
how
God,
ridiculous that was. Yeah.
Okay.
So sprung that one on Nick. I didn't write that one down in our pre-show.
That
notes.
got me good, man.
Yeah. So the actual guy I'm talking about is a guy that was on the Bears last year. So there's been a lot of talk of letting James Daniels walk. I get it. If you could truly, if you know you can draft a guy to replace him, or you can sign a guy that's going to be an instant upgrade over him, I will trust Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus to the max. However, again, he's not an all-pro lineman, but he is only 24 and a half years old, I believe, once the season starts.
And he's got 4 years under his belt.
Yeah, he started all 17 games this past year. And that, don't know if you guys watched any Bears football. We had a little bit of an issue with our offensive line staying healthy. So, and I know he was hurt a couple of years ago, but that was more of a freak injury. So obviously we are not in the locker room, Nick. You and I are not in the locker room. So this is more speculation, but he has been with the Bears organization, like you said, for a few years now, 4 years. He could be a guy that benefits from that regime change, So we spoke at length on this year on the horrific blocking schemes and play designs of Matt Nagy, but that he put them in bad situations constantly. I can see where, like I said, a regime change can really kind of turn his career around with the Bears. What do you think, Nick?
Sorry, I was on mute. But no, I agree with you. I think we do need to keep him. I think he'll take a hometown discount. I think he likes the direction that the team is going to go. He was on that 2018 team. That was his rookie season. And he's been a strong lineman. I mean, he was hurt in 2020, but he's been a huge part of this offensive line. He's really a seasoned veteran for only being 24 and a half. You don't hear that much from a lineman perspective. And I don't know if you guys follow him on IG, but he literally reposts stuff of him always wearing Bears stuff, working out. He wants to be in Chicago, and he just puts on more and more weight, good weight, every single season. I like James Daniel a lot. This is also a controversial one. I'm just going to put it out there, though, because I am this guy's biggest fan from, just a badass, like just a true Chicago Bear. Why not go out and get Kyle Long on a 1-year contract? Big guard, he could come in on a super cheap contract due to being injured, unfortunately, again last year. But I would love Kyle Long to come back to the Chicago Bears. Ryan Poles signed him last year in Kansas City, seeing his potential. I'm sure they could talk. He's a fan favorite, but the McCaskies don't get along so well. Just got to put that out there. The McCaskey would love him for the jersey sales. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But I would love him to come back from a mentorship perspective. We'll see, though. I would love to see Kyle Long come in on a 1-year, $4 million contract or $3 million. I'm paying him more, though, because I like him a lot. But the talent is there if he stays healthy. Good rotation guy. You never know. So, Tony, any last comments before we close out?
Yeah. So, I'll just touch on Kyle Long quick, and then we'll get out of here. So, I've heard a couple of interviews with him over the past few years. He didn't say he doesn't hate the Bears. He didn't say anything specifically about the McCaskies, so I don't know. But he said basically, I would not be open to a comeback until Pace and Nagy are gone, because he just felt like there's bad blood there. But he likes Chicago, and you know what? At least as a backup guard, we can do worse, as we've seen over the past couple of years, turning a defensive tackle into it doesn't matter. Well, that's
and he's not going to be like Fetty, who's going to go up to guys and yell at them for a 15-yard penalty for defending your quarterback. He's going to be the guy throwing the punches, and that's that's worth it to me then. But anyway,
signed enforcer, yeah.
Exactly. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. We'll have more coming up tomorrow about the tight ends for free agency. So stay tuned for that. But with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside Tony Spita. See you guys next time.